On Father's Day, my own son stood in front of 40 people, lifted a crystal wine glass, smiled like he was about to honor me, and said, "I wish you'd never been my dad." The laughter stopped so suddenly I could hear the hummingbirds near the bougainvillea hedge. My granddaughter froze with a paper plate in her hands. My youngest grandson slowly lowered the little American flag he'd been waving. Even the grill seemed to go quiet. I looked directly into my son's eyes. He was waiting for anger, maybe shouting, maybe tears. He'd already decided I was the villain in whatever story he'd been telling himself. Instead, I stood up, straightened my navy polo shirt, smiled calmly, and said, "Then live as if you never had a father." I set my untouched drink on the patio table, walked past every stunned guest, picked up the keys to the black Porsche parked beside the driveway, and drove away. About 10 minutes later, stopped at a red light on Scottsdale Road, my phone buzzed. "Ethan, bring my car back, or I'm calling the cops." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because, after everything I'd sacrificed to build the life he'd inherited, my own son still believed that Porsche belonged to him. It didn't. It never had. My name is Daniel Harper. I'm 63, widowed, retired, and until that Father's Day afternoon, I would have told anyone my greatest achievement wasn't building a successful business. It was raising my son. Turns out I was wrong about at least one of those things. I kept driving without answering, the Arizona sun reflecting off the hood as I headed north, leaving behind the celebration I'd paid for. I'd rented the catering, bought every steak, ordered the decorations, even the custom cake sitting untouched on the patio had been my idea. Funny how quickly a celebration can become a funeral, not for a person, for a relationship. I pulled into a scenic overlook and shut off the engine. For the first time all afternoon, the silence felt honest. Memories have a strange habit of arriving when your heart finally gets tired of pretending everything is fine. I remembered the tiny apartment where Ethan and I lived after his mother and I married. Back then, we didn't have money, we had determination. I worked construction by day, repaired air conditioning units out of our garage by night, took weekend calls from customers who couldn't afford emergency fees. My wife Linda used to tease me. One day she'd say, "You're going to own the biggest HVAC company in Arizona." I'd laugh and say I'd settle for paying off the truck. Somehow we managed both. Over 35 years, Harper Climate Solutions grew from one pickup truck into a respected regional company with more than 80 employees. We never became a billion-dollar corporation. We became something better, a company people trusted, the kind where technicians stayed 20 years because I remembered their kids' birthdays, because Linda and I remembered what it felt like to struggle. We promised ourselves Ethan never would. Baseball camps, music lessons, a reliable car at 16, college without loans. When he wanted to start a marketing company, I quietly guaranteed the bank loan. When it struggled in year 2, I paid it off without telling anyone. When he proposed to Ashley, I covered most of the wedding. I never kept score. Parents aren't supposed to. At least that's what I believed. After Linda passed from pancreatic cancer 8 years ago, helping Ethan became my way of staying connected to her. She always believed family came before everything else. Sometimes I wonder if I misunderstood what she meant. Family comes before pride, not before accountability. Looking back, I can see the moments I ignored. If Ethan introduced friends to my lake house, he'd call it our family place. Then, slowly, my place. If someone admired the Porsche, he'd smile and say, "Yeah, I've always loved German engineering." He never claimed he'd bought it. He simply never corrected anyone. I heard it once at the country club. "Must be nice driving that Porsche." Ethan smiled. "It is." I stood 10 feet away. He never looked at me. I should have spoken up. Instead, I convinced myself it wasn't worth embarrassing my son. That became a dangerous habit, excusing things because confronting them seemed harder. The Porsche had a simple story. I bought it 2 years after retiring, a gift to myself. Linda had always laughed whenever one drove past. If we ever make it, she'd joke, you deserve one. She never lived to see me buy it. I cried in the dealership parking lot, not because of the car, because she wasn't sitting beside me. A few months later, Ethan asked to borrow it for a charity gala. Of course, I said. Then another event, then weekends, then it became easier just leaving it at his house. The title, registration, insurance, everything stayed in my name. There was never a discussion about changing ownership because I never intended to. It was still my car. Apparently Ethan had rewritten that story in his own mind, or maybe Ashley helped him. Someday it'll all be yours anyway, she'd tell him when she thought I wasn't listening. My phone buzzed again. Final warning, I'm reporting the car stolen. I set it face down on the passenger seat. If my son truly believed I had stolen my own Porsche, he was about to learn that reality doesn't bend around entitlement. A few minutes later, the caller ID read Scottsdale Police Department. Mr. Harper, we've received a stolen vehicle report filed by someone claiming your Porsche was taken this afternoon. I closed my eyes. Father's Day wasn't over. It was only beginning. The officer was calm, professional. May I ask who's reporting it stolen, I said, though I already knew. Your son, Ethan Harper. I looked through the windshield toward the desert mountains and didn't say anything for a long moment. Sir, are you currently in possession of the vehicle? I am. And do you have proof of ownership? I have more than proof. I have the original title, registration, insurance, purchase agreement, and every maintenance record since I bought it. A pause. You bought it? Yes. If you're willing, could you email us copies? I'll send them in 5 minutes. Before hanging up, the officer added something that stayed with me. I've handled a lot of family disputes. They usually aren't really about the car. No, I replied quietly, they're almost never about the car. 20 minutes later, sitting in a coffee shop near Cave Creek, I forwarded the documents. The title listed one owner, Daniel Thomas Harper. No co-owner, no transfer, no lien, just me. Amazing how much truth can fit on one page. My attorney, Richard Benson, called about 15 minutes after that. We'd known each other nearly 30 years. He'd handled Linda's estate. You sound tired, he said. I had an interesting Father's Day. He'd already heard the police had contacted him to verify ownership. Daniel, he said, I think we've reached the point where ignoring these problems isn't helping anyone. I know I've been expecting this call. That surprised him. You've spent years asking me not to say anything whenever Ethan crossed another line, he said. He wasn't wrong. There had been plenty of lines, I just kept erasing them. 5 years earlier, at a charity fundraiser, Ethan introduced me to a real estate developer as his dad, then let the man admire the Porsche and just say thanks, not it's my father's, just thanks. Later that evening I mentioned it. Dad, does it really matter? He said. It isn't about the car. I let it go. Then came the lake house Linda and I had bought years earlier, somewhere peaceful for fishing and reading. After she died, I visited less and Ethan's family used it more. I arrived unexpectedly one summer with groceries and heard him telling a couple, "You should see this place at Christmas. It's basically our second home." Ashley added, "We'll probably renovate the kitchen after everything becomes official." I told myself she'd misspoken. She hadn't. The biggest warning came 2 years ago at our company's 40th anniversary picnic, when a senior technician congratulated Ethan on taking over someday, and Ethan nodded and said he was looking forward to putting his own stamp on things. I'd never promised him the company. I'd assumed we'd discuss succession when I was ready. He'd assumed it was automatic. Still, I stayed quiet. Richard's voice pulled me back. "Daniel, you've been silent." I was remembering all the times I should have spoken, I said. "You can't change those," he said. "No, but I can stop creating new ones." That evening I drove home. The decorations were gone, only a few balloons still tied to the mailbox. Inside my study, I unlocked the fireproof cabinet and pulled out the folder labelled Estate Plan. Linda and I had written most of it together, back when entitlement wasn't part of our vocabulary. Everything flowed to Ethan, generous provisions, because I believed generosity would strengthen family bonds. Instead, maybe it had weakened something more important. Responsibility. Richard called again. I think it's time we review every document in that estate plan. I'll be there, 9 o'clock. At exactly 9 Monday morning, I walked into Richard's office. Before we discussed changes, he said, "Are you doing this because you're angry?" "If I were angry, I'd cut him out entirely," I said. "Then why are we here?" "I think I've confused love with enabling," I told him. "Every time I rescued him financially, every time I overlooked his arrogance, every time I stayed silent, I called it love." "Maybe it wasn't. What do you think it was?" he asked. "Fear," I said. Fear that if I stopped fixing his problems, he'd stop loving me. We spent 3 hours reworking everything. Harper Climate Solutions, instead of transferring directly to Ethan, I created an employee ownership trust. It wasn't built by me alone, I told Richard. It was built by technicians who crawled through attics in August, dispatchers who answered calls at 2 a.m. Ethan could still work there if he earned it. The lake house, instead of staying in the family, I donated it to a veterans retreat organization, something Linda had always dreamed of doing. The investment accounts became an education foundation in Linda's name, scholarships for people entering skilled trades. "This is quite a change," Richard said. "I'm not taking money from my son," I told him. "I'm putting purpose ahead of entitlement. If Ethan sincerely changes years from now, can these documents change again?" he asked. "Absolutely," I said. "So this isn't revenge. No, this is accountability." When I pulled into my driveway that afternoon, Ashley's SUV was there, but the Porsche wasn't, because I was driving it. Ethan stormed out before I reached the porch. "You embarrassed me in front of the police." "I didn't call them," I said. "You knew exactly what would happen." "I knew the truth would happen." Ashley appeared behind him. "This is childish," she said. "Reporting someone for stealing their own car is childish," I said. "Just sign the title over," Ethan demanded. "It isn't the car," I said. "You've basically given it to me already. I've been driving it, borrowing it. Same difference." "No, it isn't." I walked into my study and returned with the original documents, every one carrying my name. Ashley picked one up, her confidence fading. "This is really in his name," she said. "It always has been," I said. "So you've been lying to me," Ethan said. "I let you borrow my car. I never once told you it was yours. You just assumed." The room went quiet. "This stopped being about the car," I told him, "the moment you stood in front of your children and wished you'd never had me as your father." He didn't have an answer. After they left, I found the paper banner still hanging over the patio. "World's Best Dad," one corner flapping in the breeze. I took it down and folded it carefully, remembering my granddaughter handing it to me with the biggest smile. Wednesday morning, my operations manager, Mike Sullivan, 27 years at the company, family in every way but blood, told me some of the guys were worried that Ethan talked like he already owned the place, treated the office like it was beneath him. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" I asked. "Because nobody wanted to come between a father and his son. Everyone had been protecting my feelings just as I had been protecting Ethan's. That week I got calls from my sister Karen, who thought I should just apologize, my cousin Frank, who asked if I was trying to punish the kid, and Pastor Michael, who asked if I'd forgiven him. I forgave him the moment I realized how lost he is. I said, "But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences." By Friday, the truth had started spreading on its own. A police officer mentioned it to a customer, who mentioned it to a business owner, and soon people at the country club realized the Porsche wasn't Ethan's, the lake house wasn't his, and I'd paid his office lease for 2 years. The illusion fell apart, not because I exposed him, but because reality caught up. Saturday afternoon, Ashley showed up alone. No makeup, no designer clothes. "I didn't know the car wasn't his," she said. "I honestly thought you'd already given it to him." "I think we both started believing things that were never true," she admitted. I kept telling him everything would eventually belong to us. He hasn't slept since Father's Day, she said. Neither have I. But I'm starting to think the only person he should have blamed was himself. The next day, Ethan came alone. No watch, no sunglasses, wrinkled shirt. A man who looked much older than 38. "Can I come in?" he asked. "You don't need permission to enter your father's house," I said. "Your father's house, not yours, not ours, mine." We sat at the kitchen table where Linda and I had shared thousands of cups of coffee. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "Which kind of sorry is this?" I asked. "The kind that comes from getting caught, or the kind that comes from finally understanding?" "I honestly don't know," he admitted, the first honest thing he'd said in years. "I've blamed you for years," he said, "for always being successful. No matter what I did, people compared me to you. I got tired of hearing it." "So you decided to become me," I said. He nodded. "When did that happen?" "Maybe after Mum died." "Everything changed after that." "Mine did too," I said. "I buried myself in gratitude. You buried yourself in resentment." "I kept thinking," he said, "that if people believed I already had everything, they'd stop asking why I hadn't built anything myself." I brought out an old wooden box, kindergarten drawings, trophies, birthday cards, and near the bottom, a folded piece of construction paper, faded crayon letters, "My dad is my hero." He unfolded it, hands trembling. "You never corrected the spelling," he said. "I knew what you meant. I don't know where that little boy went," he said. "I don't think he disappeared," I told him. "I think he got buried. Ashley's staying with her sister," he told me. "She said she married a man who wanted to inherit a life instead of building one." "Was she wrong?" I asked. "No." For nearly 2 hours we talked, really talked. His business wasn't doing nearly as well as everyone believed. He'd borrowed money to maintain appearances, vacations, country club dues, private school tuition. "I thought once I inherited everything," he said, "I'd finally catch up." "That's the trap, son," I told him. "Living tomorrow with money you haven't earned today." "Can it ever change back?" he asked about the estate. "Yes," I said, "when trust changes." Before leaving, he stood in the doorway. "I don't expect the Porsche. You won't get it. I don't expect the company. You may still have a place there, as an employee, not an heir." He nodded, and for the first time in his life said, "I'm actually going to have to build something." "Your mother would have liked hearing that," I said. "So would I," he answered, and walked down the driveway, not angry, thinking. Months passed quietly. No demands, no arguments, just the silence of someone doing difficult work where nobody else could see. Ethan took a management job at a regional building supply company in Phoenix, earned it through interviews and a skills assessment, no one hiring him for my last name. I almost walked away during the second interview, he told me. They asked what I'd accomplished on my own, and I told them I was still figuring that out. Ashley and Ethan separated for months while I stayed out of it. When she asked to meet for lunch, there was humility in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "I've spent a year blaming Ethan," she said, "but I wasn't innocent. I kept pushing him to compete with people who didn't even know we existed." "We both made mistakes," I told her. "I gave too much, expected gratitude to teach responsibility." "Do you think people can really change?" she asked. "I think people change when pretending becomes more painful than telling the truth." Months later, she and Ethan began counseling together. Harper Climate Solutions kept growing. The Employee Ownership Trust became official. At our picnic, Mike Sullivan stood and said he'd never seen a boss thank his employees that way. And one by one, the technicians began clapping not for me, for one another. About 10 months after that Father's Day, my grandson Noah, 13 now, climbed onto the porch swing beside me. "Dad's different," he said. "He doesn't yell anymore. He's sold his fancy watch. We're not joining the country club again." "How do you feel about that?" I asked. "I kind of like fishing better," he said. "So did your grandma. Dad says you taught him something," he told me. "Borrowed success disappears. Earned success stays. I wish I'd taught him that sooner, I said. Then Father's Day arrived again. No caterers, no oversized celebration, just hamburgers, potato salad, my grandchildren running through a sprinkler, exactly the kind of day Linda loved most. An old blue Ford pickup pulled into the driveway. Ethan climbed out in faded jeans and work boots. I paid cash, he said. First vehicle I've ever owned without anybody's help. He handed me a small wrapped package, a wooden picture frame with a photo of Linda, Ethan, and me beside our very first company truck. On the back, in his handwriting, Dad. For years I confused receiving with earning. I thought inheritance would make me successful. You taught me that character comes first. Thank you for loving me enough to stop rescuing me. Happy Father's Day. Love, Ethan. I hugged my son. Not because everything had been forgotten, it hadn't. Not because trust had fully returned. Trust takes time. I hugged him because, for the first time in years, I wasn't embracing the man he pretended to be. I was embracing the man he was becoming. Later, he looked toward the garage. The Porsche still runs, I said. Want to take it for a drive sometime? No, he said. I'm waiting until I can buy one myself. People sometimes ask if reporting my Porsche stolen was the worst thing Ethan ever did. It wasn't. The worst thing was believing another person's success could become his own just by standing close to it. The best thing that happened wasn't the estate plan or keeping the Porsche or being proven right. It was watching my son discover that dignity can't be inherited. It has to be earned. If this story moved you, hit like, drop a comment about the part that stayed with you, and subscribe to Aftermath Tales so you never miss the next one. Your support keeps these stories coming, so share this with someone who needs to hear it, and we'll see you next time.